Hey, hey, hey.
How are you today?
I'm good. Been enjoying having a little more rain now in Nashville. It was so dry there for a little while, but the past week that we were out of town for a lot of it, but finally the grass is growing again.
I know we were up in New York. We commented on how beautiful it was and how green everything was. Yeah, it was like straw. The last time I mowed my lawn, I just kicked up enough dust. That's what I did is I ate dust the entire time. So I was concerned, but came home and man, yeah, looking good. So
Yeah, not quite as hot either, which is great.
yeah, yeah. Too bad so many other places around the country, from what I understand, are really, really hot. So I hope wherever you are, y'all are chilling and loving life. That's all I got to say. So we're going to talk about something really interesting today. At least I think it's interesting, and that's web website design mistakes. Hey, look at there, Renee. We just saw you, Renee. It was so great to see you in person. You and Ronnie. So that was fun.
It was
Really
good.
enjoyed it.
Up in New
Uh,
York, they had just as long a drive as we did.
I know, I know. So what we find is there are just some really common mistakes that website designers make when it comes to marketing. And I want to stop here because I'm not trying to, um, you know, website design is hard. It's not something I ever want to do. And it's really difficult to understand that web design is one thing, SEO is another thing, and then conversion is yet another thing. So those are three different modalities, if you will. There are companies that specialize in nothing but conversion, just to create a website that converts. Then there are those that come in and specialize in nothing but SEO. And then you have the designers, and sometimes the designers are actually engineers. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, or their designers. I mean, their primary concern is that it looks good and reflects the brand, and that's important. But it's not the only consideration in web design, and it has to be functional design as well. And that's where the engineer side of it comes in. That's where you have to find that rare unicorn of an employee or a designer who is good at thinking about the visuals and good at making that brand, really representing that brand well visually, but also thinking about how to architect the website in a way that it's very functional too. And by functional, I'm kind of indicating there that it's like it needs to be obvious to a visitor on the page where to go, what to click on, how to navigate the site from page to page using a menu system or links in the copy. Buttons and images and the placement of all of those things are important, as well as like the color of it and the images and the choices of the layout and the theme and all of that. So it's a pretty rare person that can wear, because it's kind of two sides of the same coin, two different parts of the brain might be another way of saying it. It's you have to think differently when you're talking about design than when you're talking about function, and marrying those two things together. The designers who can do that well, that's the goal. That's
Yeah.
where it's at.
So I wanted to say that up front because the last thing I want people to think is that we're uh, picking on somebody, because this is not a pick on. These are just the things that we see often, that we know needs to be addressed. It's not even a fix or not fix. It just needs to be addressed. And depending on the type of business and what you do, it may be a little bit different. So we're just going to go there. So the very first thing we're going to jump in, and Carter, I'm going to make this you because I want the second one.
Okay. Yeah, not correctly using your logo. I would expand this a little bit and say not correctly um, making it obvious who you are and what you do, right? Because I mean that's ultimately what a logo should do. I mean, at a glance, it should tell people not only the name of your company, but hopefully a little bit about what you actually can do for them, right? So oftentimes a logo on a website might include a slogan or a tagline that helps to explain what it is that you do if it's not purely obvious. Um, in service businesses, most of the time you'll find businesses that have the name of their primary service somewhere in the name of their company too, and so it shows up kind of in their logo by default. But not always. I've seen some really cute company names that don't at all describe what services they offer. So it's important on your website to not only have the logo displayed where people want to see it, which is always that top left corner, um, or smack in the middle near the top, usually like with an image behind it or something, occupying a larger space, but at least up in the top left corner. And it should be, obvious to people what you do. It should be visible. It shouldn't be hidden. It shouldn't be small text and type that's difficult to read. It shouldn't be a font that is impossible to decipher what it is. I've seen logos that used like a skateboarder font or something that was just, I mean, it looked cool, but you could not tell what the actual word was that was spelled out. And to me, that would be a logo design mistake. Maybe for them, it's not. Maybe for the people that look at that logo, they understand that font better than I do. But it was an obvious mistake to me. The only time you can really get away with using a scripty font that nobody can read is if you're like a massive brand, usually in the fashion or design industry, where you're the designer and you're using a signature or something like that as your brand or as your logo. And then it becomes recognizable just as it is and for what it is, and not necessarily just a logo. So it'd be more of a trademark or a mark for the brand rather than just purely a logo. I'm getting in the weeds here, but I mean, that's essentially it. Place it somewhere that people can see it. Make sure it stands out. Make sure the font is easily readable on all devices, not just one device, but all sorts of different screen sizes. That logo should be readable and where people would expect to see it.
So I've got a question here. I'm not sure who this guy is, but it's drunk. So that's good. Hopefully sober will answer. I don't know. How do you feel about advertising products on the front page of your website, or should products only be in a link? So let me just say this: this is really different depending on your type of business. It really is. If you have a very narrow set of products, absolutely, put them on the front page. That's fine. But products need to be arranged in a way that there's categories that go down to a product page. So if you got a lot of different products and you just throw all those products or as many as you think you can on the front page, it becomes very, very busy. So it really depends on what you're trying to do, the type of business you have. Carter and I owned an e-commerce business back in the day. It was successful. We decided to shut it down and just concentrate on what we have in front of us. But it was doing really, really well. Even when we shut it down, we just didn't have enough time to do both. So we had to make a choice. But I would tell you that is set up way different than like a service.
Well, my answer to that would be you put products on there if the products are the reason people are coming to your site. And if you sell a product that people really want, then yeah, put products on your own page. Make that the thing that people see and click on in order to learn more about it or how to get it or whatever. If you're a service business, then you really want to focus on offering your services up front, because that's where people, okay, it's a sneaker resale business.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's more e-commerce, and that's really not the focus of this particular live stream and the audience that we typically talk to, that are much more in the home services industry and are really more service related. And they may have a product that is really well known. A lot of times plumbers, they may be a dealer for American Standard or Kohler or something like that, which is a brand that's recognizable. and people may want that brand, and they're looking for a service that can provide them that brand as well. In which case, using those products or those logos is a good idea. But otherwise, focusing more on the services would be a more appropriate thing.
Yeah, and I would just, I would gonna just say part of that is if you have a sneaker resale business, then you do need to organize that business in a way that you have categories that they could drill down, that they could get to the products quicker. Because if you can't get them all on the front page, what you're going to want to do is make to where they're in silos to where you get to whatever those products are from that front page. So hopefully that helps. So here's another Chuck Woodhouse. My marketing company is so good. Have my logo in multiples, going everywhere. So you highly recommend them. Thank you, Chuck. And just in full disclosure, we are Chuck Woodhouse Marketing Company.
I love how Chuck is so artful in not only promoting his own business and his own tagline, but also in making sure that he gives props and credit to us too, which is like the bait to get us to flash his stuff up on the screen.
Just fantastic.
Brilliant. A great example of a true marketer.
Of a true marketer. That is true. So true. So here's the second one. You talked about the itty bitty fonts or the scripting fonts or whatever in the logo. I'm just going to tell you, especially in service businesses, guys, you've got people 55 and over that are, a lot of them are your clients. And if you have the tiniest fonts, don't put yellow font on a black background, or it's awful. You can't read it. You want to make sure that they're big enough to read. It's very clean. It's black. It's white. It's just easy to read. So, what I would say, if you can't put it in front of your parents and your parents can't read it, then maybe you need to change those itty bitty fonts. And I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience, but back in the day when my mom was alive, it was about 2010, 11, right around in there. She got an iPhone, and first thing she said is, "I can't read anything on this dang phone that I just paid all this money for." And so I went in and reset her font, because you can make it all bigger. And it was like, oh, that's great. Now they could just do that online. That would be perfect. So my point with that is, make sure that you have readable fonts, not only in size, but the font itself, that it's very readable. Arial is a good one. There's a lot more good ones than bad ones in my mind. So you ought to be able to find one that's readable, that really does fit what you want. But also pay attention to the color of the font and the background color, because sometimes that really is a problem.
And I'll be talking more about that in a later mistake that we're going to cover. I think it's number 5 in the list. So
okay,
we'll do that for sure. But yeah, this also touches on responsive design too, which is was the buzzword 3 or 4 years ago, but it's still important. I think most of the websites that we're seeing these days in service industries are at least cover the minimum need for responsiveness. But that's what responsiveness essentially is. I mean, if you take a page that's this big and you squeeze it down to a device that's this big, the tendency is for that font to go from a readable, reasonably readable font at this size down to something that's impossible, microscopic to read at a smaller device size. But a responsive site keeps in mind the fact that we're shrinking down to a new size. So we need to increase the size of this font so that it becomes better legible on smaller devices. So that's part of why responsiveness is so important.
Well, the other thing about that too, if you look at the different devices and the way people are searching, it is fastly, very quickly becoming mobile. Mobile is right now what I see. It's very rare when I see desktop outrank mobile as the device that's being searched on. So just know that that's really, really important.
Yeah.
So here's another one from Chuck. Service providers, 50-plus-year-old is the disposable income folks. That's right. So you want to make sure they read it. If they've got disposable income, I mean that's your best customer. Not to say that other people aren't worth helping and all that kind of stuff. They absolutely are. But your best customer that you know is gonna pay you without problems are normally really in that
So
disposable.
here's where we see that disconnect, though, right? Because the average designer's age is a 20 something with a really high powered computer and a very expensive color monitor,
Yeah.
right? And so they can design things that look great. I mean, the subtle contrast between that sort of, mauvish gray color background and the slightly darker font over the top of it looks good on their screen. But you put it in front of someone with older eyes on a much older computer system and a monitor that's kind of fading, and maybe the top corner is darker than the rest of the thing. And suddenly you can't even see that there's text there. It just looks like a sort of a grayish swatch of, block of color there, and you can't even see it. So that's some of that disconnect that we talk about, right?
Yeah, no, it really is. And you got to pay attention to those things. Absolutely. So number 3, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. Now, some of you guys are going to go, wait a minute, I've seen y'all's website. It has paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. And I would counter with, yes, it does, because we have clients that have never given us a picture, that have never sent us anything to put on there. And we know right now, and if you don't know this, go back and listen to some of our other Spark Lives, because we've covered this in ad nauseum a few months ago about Google wants original photos. Original. Take the best photographs that you can and get them on your website, on your social, on your Google business profile. Very, very important. That's how you break up a page. You break it up with website. You break it up with really good pictures. You break it up with videos. You break it up with graphics. You break it up with testimonials. These are all the things that you use these days so that you don't have paragraph after paragraph after paragraph.
Well, to be fair, images are one way of breaking it up and drawing the eye of the reader through the copy of your website to where they'll be more interested in reading it. But there's some other very effective and arguably perhaps even more effective, because not every subject that you're talking about lends itself to photos. And we all know, if we've been on the, on a news website, maybe the article is a political article and there's nothing to really show. There's no pictures to really go with it, but the page is crawling with ads and images all the way through it, and that can be distracting. So images, that's a design choice, and it's an important one. But the thing that the news websites know is that if they can continue to write headlines and subheaders for paragraph sections and things throughout the content, that will keep your eye moving through the article as well. So it's very important not to just put a large block of small font text, every paragraph just butted up against the next one all the way down the page, but, leaving open space on the page, making it feel much more open, adding headers and subheaders so that people know when they scroll down there, they're scanning those headlines or those headers, and they read a section header and they go, okay, this is the information I really want. It makes it easier for them to find what they're looking for amongst all of the other content that might be on a page. So it's not that a page has too much content. It's that the content on that page is not well organized in order to draw readers' attention through it all the way from top to bottom.
So basically what we're saying is, if you organize your content well with headers and going through and put the applicable pictures and videos on there, you should have a pretty dang good page, right?
Yeah. And, we've seen this happen. We've gotten pages that are just dense content. I mean, paragraph after paragraph, like you said, and it felt heavy. I mean, the moment you hit the page, you look at how much copy there is and you just want to leave, right? You think of all the work it's going to take for you to sit there and read it. But you can take that exact same page and not change, add, or remove a word of it, but lay it out differently and add some things to it, some headers and stuff that draw people through it. And suddenly it's a delight to read, and you don't realize you've just spent 15 minutes digesting the content. it just made it more approachable, more friendly looking, and less daunting as a task to sit there and read it all.
No, there's nothing like opening something up and thinking you have to sit there and just go through a bunch of stuff. You know you're going to be asleep by the time you get 3/4 of the way through. So what I like to do is tell people this: if you can't skim a page and get a really good idea, skimming the headlines and looking at the photographs that are on there, just photos, maybe a video. If you can't do that and be able to tell what that page really is about, that's a problem.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Yeah. So if you can go through it and figure it out and know what it's about, then it's probably well written.
Yeah, Chuck said pics and video are most effective when it has a homegrown look because it's more authentic. Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking that you've
Absolutely.
got to pay, $20,000 to, photographer and I mean, professional is good too, but covering it with having images that look like they were real images and not so treated and so professional that people could mistake it for a stock image or stock video
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah, John Mueller just came out. John Mueller is somebody that we follow that's kind of Google's spokesperson. He just came out this last week and said one of the things that people miss is they don't take the best photos possible for their products and services. That's becoming a bigger and bigger thing. The best possible, so that's a real important thing. So, oh, Tom, good point.
Sorry, we both clicked
Oh,
at
we
the same
both clicked at the same time. Applies to emails as well, in his opinion. I totally agree. Totally agree with that, Tom. Good
time.
point. Good.
Yeah. I mean, an email essentially is like a page. I mean, it's a piece of content that you want people to focus on while they're there.
Yep, absolutely. So number 4 is not using call to actions. So a lot of times people think a call to action is, make the sale or somebody booking an appointment or whatnot. But really, a call to action is what is the next step. So you want to call them to action on where they need to go next. If that is a phone call, then great. They can make a phone call. If you can get on a chat, then you want to do it through chat. You want to do it through text. You want to do it through an appointment form. Whatever. And if you are an e-commerce business, if you want to get them into the cart, have them put things in the cart, and then you got to worry about cart abandonment. So when you go that direction. So just kind of know there's all different calls to action. Sometimes we want to call to action. Now, I'll just say we talked about first party, third party. Um, um, my brain just left. Looks the
Data.
word data. Thank you. Yeah, you think a 4-letter word, data. So anyway, it's really important to start collecting that first party data. So maybe one of the calls to action that you really want is to do a newsletter or some type of a giveaway or something to where you're gathering those email addresses of people that are interested in what you do. So there's all different types of call to action. There's different reasons to have call to actions on your site, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So those are all the things that you absolutely can look at when you look at CTAs.
And I'll just say, this kind of goes back to the gentleman who on YouTube who was asking about, do we put products on the page or in the links? A well-placed image of a product or a service is a good call to action. It helps people know that they found what they're looking for, and that if they click on something, they're going to go to a place where they can get what they need, right? That's essentially what a call to action is. And so, that's that when you're thinking about calls to action, it doesn't always have to be a button. It doesn't always have to be a text that says, click here to learn more about blah, 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 or to schedule or whatever. All those things are effective and certainly do those things. But images can also be very effective in helping people know, okay, I'm in the right section. This is the part of the website that's going to tell me what I need. I'm going to click here to go there and learn more about it and get what I need.
So that's really the journey through the website. Where do you want people to go next is what you want to ask when you're looking at that.
Yeah.
So Carter, I'm going to let you have this one.
Yeah, this is something that's become a bigger and bigger issue just in the past 2 to 3 years. It's been on our radar. We've seen more of this happening, and it is the subject of. I mean, it absolutely is becoming part of what design has to be for any well executed website. Not just well executed, but something that isn't like akin to malpractice, right? Like what we're seeing is that the ADA, the Americans Disabilities Act, which governs like wheelchair accessibility for on-premises locations and the ability for people to who are disabled to be able to enjoy the same services as an abled person. So um, websites are part of that. If you have a public website, the ADA and the courts rather are starting to look at a public website as no different than a public location that people would go visit, get in their car and drive to or come into. So accessibility standards for websites now really do matter. And what does that look like? That means that sight impaired people, hearing impaired people, colorblind people, anyone who might have trouble digesting the information on your website because of all of the reasons that we've just mentioned, a font that's too small, a site that's not responsive, a site that's built in technology that's so ancient or so old or so obscure that screen readers can't actually read. So a screen reader is, for those who are sight impaired, a screen reader is what that person would use in order to literally read to them audibly all of the content on the page. And it will tell them there's an image here, and it'll use the metadata about that image to describe that image to the person who's visiting the site but can't see the image. It'll navigate all of the menu options. It'll read the text on the page. It'll read what the button says. You can tab through using a screen reader and listen to where you are on the page. If you can't use a mouse to navigate to various parts, the tabs, using the tab key on your computer will tell you that you're on a button that if you clicked it would take you to the schedule form, and then it would read to you all of the blanks on the schedule form. Well, your site underneath the hood has to be built in a way that is compliant or accessible, okay? And it's difficult to know what they mean by accessible. The Americans for Disabilities Act is written in a way that is a little bit difficult to understand. It's more of a guideline than a law. But it is absolutely something that is being taken to court. Businesses that do not have a site that is easily navigable by a sight impaired person or someone with a disability that prevents them from using a public website, they're finding for these plaintiffs, and they're able to collect money from businesses that haven't put in the effort to make their site accessible. Before, it was just really big websites and government sites and big brands and that kind of thing. But now we're starting to see it filter down into home service businesses as well. And so our recommendation, in fact, our standard now of customer service includes a website that is compliant with accessibility standards as best we understand them, and gives people who are disabled some choices in how to interact with the website that we've designed for a client in a way that they need to interact with it. If they need to add more high contrast between the text and the background, they can do that with a click on our website. If they need to remove all of the images from the site and just look at the text, they can do that. There's a whole lot of things that we've built into the systems that we use now, so that we put the user, regardless of their ability, in the driver's seat to make the experience work for them and make it accessible for them so that they can use it. And this is, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, like up until just in the past 2 or 3 years, it could be forgiven because most web designers didn't have the technical chops to understand how to build out underneath the hood all of the things that they needed to make it fully accessible. But there's no excuse anymore. And so if you're going to be a web designer, you've got to understand accessibility guidelines, and you've got to know what those standards are and build your websites to those standards.
Yeah, and just a note, we're rolling that out right now. just for our clients that watch this, our goal is that by September 1st, it'll be on this will be part of every single website. I've done a tremendous amount of research on this, making sure that we're not overextending, and by that I mean that we're not being panicky and saying, we're doing it too soon. But we've come to the conclusion that we probably need to do it sooner than later, because the fines are really high. I mean,
They're climbing.
yeah, and they're climbing. I've seen a small business got hit with $120,000 fine, and it's a double fine from my understanding. That not only the business get fined, but the website company also gets fined. So you can imagine if we have websites that aren't taken care of that we deal with, what those fines would look like on our end. So yeah, it's going to be a no option, or for us, if if our clients opt out, they're going to have to sign a piece of paper so that we're not liable if they get fined. It's just, we can't do that anymore. So that's just kind of the way that is. That's business, guys. You know how that goes. Everybody's got to protect themselves.
Terry asked a good question. Okay, good. You're picking it up.
Yeah. How in depth should you be with writing the description for the metadata for each photo? So Terry, what I would tell you is you don't have to describe the whole thing. Most of the time when you do your description on your photo, you want to have it what I call the keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method. The shortest thing that you can say that also describes it is best. In other words, it doesn't need a dissertation. And I've seen some people do dissertations, and it's like it kind of muddies the water, and it also affects, you have to think about what else you've got on that page and know that the different things are competing with each other, because the meta titles, which is what we're talking about here,
or alt tags.
Yeah, the alt text. Sorry, I did say meta titles. Then sorry, it's the page title. Alt text on these photos, they do compete with each other. So if you have several of them that are chimney sweeping, you may want to clarify and use different terms: chimney sweeping, chimney cleaning. Maybe use a location. This was chimney cleaning at, and Nashville, Tennessee, Smyrna, Tennessee, whatever. So you have a little bit of differentiation from them, so that you're not competing on the same level. Hopefully that makes sense.
And there's different schools of thought on that as well. The SEO guys love to use the alt text for for, like Taylor had just described, using it that way. But you talk to people on the accessibility standard side, and they prefer that you use more descriptive. This is an image of 3 men on a roof wearing harnesses and repairing a chimney flashing, or something like that. So, because that way it's more descriptive to somebody who is sight impaired and can't see the image. So there's kind of different schools of thought on it, and they compete a little bit. I mean, obviously one is better for SEO than the other, but one is better for sight impaired people than the other. So, finding some balance there is important too.
Yeah, I always think SEO first. That's just kind of where my brain goes. But that may be changing. I mean, we may be forced to change that a little bit. But right now, I'm still all for the SEO. Okay, I'm just saying, I am. So that's it. That's the 5 big mistakes. Hopefully, whoa, hold on. All right, sorry about that. That's it for the day for me. How about for you? You got anything else?
No, that covers pretty good. The most common ones that we see. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, I'm going to throw one more in, because I've done 5 different site reviews, and all 5 of them didn't do this one thing. Please get your phone number out of the very top part of your website and get it really big on the right-hand side in your header. If you're a service company, phone still is the number one way people want to contact you. I read that the other day. It's over 74% want to contact you by phone. Do not make people search for your phone number. Make sure it's really, really big, and go check it on a mobile device and make sure it has a click to call button on your mobile. That's my last one.
Good advice.
Good advice. All right. So, guys, Spark Live can now be found as a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite player out there. And next week is going to be a little bit different. We're going to have a replay next week, but on August 18th, we're going to be back and talk about how SEO is alive and well and why you need it. In fact, I've had several people say, would you talk more about search engine optimization? So I've got a lot of stuff coming up on search engine optimization over the next few months. So if you're really interested in search engine optimization, we're going to be talking a lot about it. You know, from what it is, why you need it, to budgeting, to all that good stuff. So now that's not next week, but the week after. The reason that we're not doing it next week, Carter and I will be at CCP in King of Prussia. We'll be up there for the convention. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, we are. It's going to be a good time. So if you're going to be if you're in the Northeast or you're planning on being there, make sure you stop by and say hey to us. I'd love to see you. And we're getting back out there, and I'm glad to see all these conventions and everything starting back up again. So looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Y'all have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.